Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest pearl clutching over Reform UK as the media and Conservatives alike express disapproval for Nigel Farage's party in the wake of a powerful but not at all surprising expose by Channel 4, and yet both the Conservatives and our media continue to treat the party as a normal party with maybe a few problems instead of what it really is. So for those who don't know, Channel 4 produced a programme where they basically filmed Reform UK activists all together, as well as candidates, talking candidly. What was revealed will come as no surprise to people who have seen them for what they are, which is most people, the most intolerant views you could find. They hate everyone that's not pale and stale, and they're not shy about saying so, at least when they think they're only in each other's company. One of the most shocking was someone who suggested that dealing with the channel crossings could be combined with a fun day out. Simply use the small boats as target practice as they came ashore. You could imagine he got the idea from the D-Day landings because, we all know which side he'd have been on then. He also used an obscene racial slur about Rishi Sunak, which I won't repeat. Needless to say, it made clear that he does not see Sunak as British. Believing him to be from Pakistan, which is odd because not even his family's from Pakistan. But it's also revealing when these people talk about wanting, we want what's best for the British people. Remember, what they mean is white people. They use the term British. It's a euphemism. They use it because it makes it sound like they're referring to nationality, to citizens, ordinary members of the public pick it up as, they mean like British people. So that includes people like Rishi Sunak. No, they don't mean British. They mean white. And the fact that they would refer to Rishi Sunak, who is as British as I am, in this way, shows exactly how they think. And this was just one of them. Someone who, in a few short sentences, told you everything you need to know about Reform UK. Because all political parties have got their bigots. They all have their racists, their sexists, their homophobes, their transphobes, their anti-Semites, their Islamophobes. But of the parties being treated by the mainstream media, only Reform UK actively encourages these people. Some parties don't do enough to call them out. They wish they would just be quiet. They don't always challenge them. But, let's put it this way. Never mind activists. An actual Reform UK candidate has said he would slaughter migrants and their families. As far as I can tell, he's still their candidate. Actually proposing the wholesale and indiscriminate murder of refugees, not enough to have you dropped by Reform UK. And yeah, if you call them far right, they complain. Even the Tories wouldn't keep a candidate who was caught saying that. They'd actually be genuinely shocked. I'll even go that far. Conservatives would be genuinely shocked that someone would even say it. They would certainly not waste 2 or 3 weeks wondering if there should be an inquiry. They would be dropped. Reform UK have dropped some candidates, of course. They dropped some when it was discovered they'd been members of the BNP in the past. But former leader of the BNP, Nick Griffin, has claimed that Nigel Farage was a member of the National Front. So is Farage going to drop himself as a candidate? Or is it untrue? Is Nick Griffin lying? Is Farage going to demand that Griffin retracts that slur or be taken to court? I've not seen him say that. But what I really want to talk about is less what Reform UK are. We know what they are. We know who they are. It's how those clutching their pearls about them allowed them to become mainstream and continue to do so. Even after this programme, there's no sea change in attitude amongst the Conservatives or the media. They're not going, hang on a minute. No. The media don't platform the BNP. They're still out there. They've not been proscribed. It's a legal political party. They've got a website with policies. But the media don't fawn all over it, so it gets no traction. If they mention it at all, they've got no problem doing so in the context of undesirable views. Yet what are their policies? End to immigration. That's Reform UK's policy. Reversing Islamisation. Something Reform UK haven't actually included in their joke manifesto, but, they talk about it a lot. Abolishing the Human Rights Act, Reform UK policy. Reform UK essentially is an attempt to present a respectable face of groups who align with the likes of NF, BNP, EDL, whatever you like, to the general public. The general public, being clear, do not like them. There's a ceiling of support which Reform UK could ever count on. But the Reform UK vote next Thursday may approach that potentially that potential ceiling. And largely because the media and the Conservatives allowed it to be seen as respectable. I'll keep pointing out, a few years ago, Reform UK were nowhere in the polls. Nowhere. Even now, Conservatives are highlighting the Channel 4 news programme as a way of attacking Reform UK, but only because they fear the impact on their own election. Rishi Sunak has commented, and he's talking about how Nigel Farage is only helping Putin. Rishi Sunak hasn't even called out Nigel Farage's party's racism against himself. He cannot even describe the party as racist. Less than 2 weeks ago, Tory candidate Robert Jenrick wrote an article for The Telegraph. In it, he described those who were attracted to Reform UK as traditional Tory voters. So he's not just writing approvingly of Reform UK or saying, oh, they're sort of on our side, but just have a bit of differences. He's saying that actually Reform UK are the mainstream Tories, that his own party's lost their way, that Reform UK are the real deal. That's what he's writing about in The Telegraph really recently. And Robert Jenrick, if he wins his seat, that's very much in doubt, but if he wins his seat, he's expected to play a leading role in the future of his party at some point in the future, perhaps very near future. So he's not just some loony on the fringes of the Conservative Party. He's going to be front and centre of it if he wins his seat. In fact, if you consider the people expected to influence or to see their influence rise within the Conservative Party after the election, assuming they win their seats, because they're all vulnerable, you look at who you've got. You've got Robert Jenrick, you've got Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, Priti Patel, Liz Truss. Where do they stand on Reform UK? Where are their attacks on Reform UK's views and the views of their activists? I can't see them. They argue that people shouldn't vote Reform, sure, but they're doing that purely on arguments about splitting the vote. It's the same sort of arguments Labour have used about parties that split their vote, for example. They'll argue, oh, you don't split the vote against the Tories. This is just the same argument. You know, but the Conservatives are not, they're not saying, hang on, Reform UK are fundamentally a nasty party. Because that's their entire argument, vote splitting. They don't say Reform UK's policies are bad or destructive. They certainly don't describe them as intolerant or racist. As a society, we have allowed a normalisation of this. I was too young to remember like fascism openly on the streets in Britain, really. I grew up in the 80s, which is a turbulent enough time politically, especially in a mining village. But also, I remember society fighting back against that intolerance. You know, when the likes of Bernard Manning were sort of banished to his own private little club. In the 90s and noughties, we became a noticeably more tolerant society. Tolerant of others, not bigoted views. Our tolerance for bigoted views massively diminished. People came up with a phrase, politically correct, and they moaned about it. Comedians moaned about it. Hey, political correct, you don't like this. But political correction was not a straitjacket. You could still air views. It was just stop using words that normalise language, which makes some people seem less human. But the last decade has seen this progress scaled back. People can be recorded saying we should shoot refugees for sport. And what do? We tut at it. Oh, it's disgraceful. What an attitude. That's not a very nice thing to say. But Nigel Farage, the leader of the party, who has taken no action against the candidate who said so, he's certainly not disowned the activists who agree. He's still going to be invited onto an interview on the mainstream media, probably today. He'll still be attending panel shows. He'll still have his own show on GB News. The party will still be treated like any other political party in the news. Farage himself is whining about the Channel 4 news programme. He's calling it an attack on Reform UK. And yet, why? They didn't make allegations. They showed footage. They showed you footage. The footage was at large gatherings of supporters as well. So it's not like just going to like a fringe little group, a darkened corner of some cafe or something, and talking to some people who happen to be members of the Conservative Party or Labour or something like that, but they're sort of away from the rest of it. No, these were in a large gathering of supporters of this party. They showed footage of views being aired which weren't challenged by those others present. They lapped them up. All Channel 4 News did, or Channel 4 did, was show Reform UK supporters being themselves, in amongst themselves. If Farage believed that these views chimed with the people that he claims to support, he would have been delighted. That, you know, some of them are trying to say, oh, you'd go into any British pub, you'll hear these views. No, you won't. No, you won't. And you won't hear these views at a Labour Party meeting either, or meetings of other political parties. You know, Nigel Farage would have been delighted with this programme. He'd have been delighted with the publicity. The reason he's angry is because these aren't views that the public share. He claims to be on the side of the people. He claims to speak for the people, but he knows he doesn't. He knows he isn't. And he knows these people are not really the people, the mass. The reason Farage is angry is because this is what he's tried to hide from the public. It's not just part of his party. It is his party. But it's also who he is. Being angry at Farage, I would say, is pointless. You may as well be angry at the fox for killing your chickens. It's who he is. It's his nature. The people we should be angry at are those who genuinely see the danger in normalising this language and views. And they did it anyway. You know, what's the point of getting mad at people who genuinely hold these views? Be mad at the ones who know these views are wrong and yet still platform them. The media who did so because Farage is entertaining and good for clicks. The moderate Conservatives who remained silent because they were worried about splitting their party. Actually, the Conservatives are the most baffling to me. Appeasement has actually only made those fractures in their party worse. And it's not like it's happened over a very brief period of time. It's happened over 10 years. They've seen it happening over 10 years and they've done nothing. They've also seen the Labour Party confront itself. The Labour Party confronted its own demons and is now potentially on course for its best result ever in general election. Not just winning, best ever result in history for the Labour Party, at least. The Conservatives who knew that Reform UK are dangerous on multiple levels really baffle me. They were once strong enough to easily take a stand. They chose not to because it was uncomfortable. Now they are much weaker. They're actually facing existential ruin. There is a possible scenario, I don't know how likely, but there is a possible pathway by which because they didn't root out the rot in their party, that rot will soon be strong enough to root them out, maybe. And still they do nothing. And still the media prioritises its clicks. And Nigel Farage complains as if what was revealed last night was just some aberrant behaviour that's taken out of context, and Channel 4 are biased for reporting on it. I've seen people try to persuade Reform UK supporters Farage is just grifting them. You know, if he ever did take over the Conservative Party, if he ever did sweep to power and become Prime Minister, he would deliver ruin for these people. And then they'd complain, well, this wasn't the reform we voted for, just like they did with Brexit. But they'd never actually reflect on the fact they've been conned. So it's pointless trying to point it out to these people. It's often said, you can try and persuade your friend that you're being conned. And when the con man makes off with all their money and you say, well, I told you so, they'll be angry with you. They're not mad at the conman. All the conman took was their money, but you made them look silly. People can't handle that. But I say, don't focus on the Reform UK supporters. There is an underbelly of the intolerant everywhere, in every society. You can look at the most tolerant societies, that underbelly is there. They've always been there. They were there when Britain became much more tolerant in my younger days. They were always there. They will always be there. They just kept their poisonous views to themselves behind closed doors because the rest of us made it clear those views weren't welcome. Then Brexit made them think they were part of a silent majority and the views came back more openly. But they were never part of a majority silent law. Otherwise, 2/3 of people do not like Nigel Farage. Focus on these people. Don't try to persuade the bigots not to be bigots because hate only makes their own lives worse as well. The hateful hate is what they do. But they're outnumbered 5-1 by those who don't hate, who might make bad decisions, who might fall for cons from time to time, but they don't hate. We need to get these people demanding better again, as we were 20 years ago. Normalise tolerance, not bigotry. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.